Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a lovely Friday morning. Thank you for joining me on Facebook this morning for my live. As always, please feel free to ask questions in the comments. I will answer throughout the live. If you would like to make a comment, make sure you're watching the live on my Canine Essentials page with Canine Essentials with Paula Holger page. Otherwise, I won't see them till after the live. If you are listening to the recording, let me know by using hashtag replay in the comment section. That way I can go back and answer your questions after the fact. Okay, let me get my screen ready. Make sure I can see comments. There we go. Okay, for those of you on the call today, say hello. I love to hear from you. And today, let's see if tell me something cute or funny that your dog does. I'll give you an example for my dogs. I had a Siberian Husky named excuse me. I had a Siberian Husky named Max. And every morning we would have a little conversation. He would get on the bed. I'd come in from the shower. My dogs always, when I come in from the shower, they all line up on the bed and wait for their morning cuddles. And he would discuss them with me. Siberians make the greatest noises. So he would woo, 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 woo every morning, which then would get the other ones woo wooing. So that was my cute and favorite thing with him. This morning's live is on what false beliefs you may have that may be impeding your dog training. These are things I see all the time with clients, beliefs of things we should do that are so ingrained, even when I point them out, they don't even realize they're doing them because they've just done them for so many dogs, or in their deepest brain, they believe this is how have to do it. Those behaviors, you just, it would feel wrong not to do them. Some are based on old school beliefs like dominance, and some are just things that somehow became laws of dog training in our eyes, whether they make sense or not. So here's the thing, they don't always make sense. Everyone has these behavior chains. I am guilty of them. Behavior chains are important. They're important in everyday life because there's things you do without thinking about them, which is what life has to be. The key here is to question everything. Some of these routines are good, but some of them are detrimental to your goals with your dog. So you want to, and it's easiest when you get a new dog, but you want to regularly kind of go, I try to every year kind of take, or every few months, take an assessment and go, what's happening, especially once I have older dogs. With younger dogs, I'm more paying attention and I'm constantly changing behaviors and training. But with older dogs, you get into routines. So I'm constantly going, what happens that I don't like? What irritates me? Where am I bitching on a regular basis? And then I start to look at the behavior chains or habits or false beliefs, and then can start looking at them and fixing them once you're aware of them. Good morning, Dorothy. How are you and Billy this wonderful morning? Okay, so let's get right into it. The first belief I want to mention is having strangers feed your dog. Um, I would imagine it started because everybody, um, we thought that if everybody your dog met gave them a cookie, your dog would be friendly. It still amazes me how many people feel all puppies should be touched. COVID has helped with that. But people see a puppy and they drive right in and, hi, how are you? And then some places, like I don't take my puppies to pet stores because walking into a pet store, most people are going to go, can I give a cookie to your dog? So here's the thing. I agree. We all want dogs to be friendly. This is why socializing is super important. But we really need to think about, what does friendly look like? Picture in your head, you and your dog are walking down the street. This is the ideal dog you're picturing. You can picture yours and then see how it differs. Someone is walking towards you on the same sidewalk. What would your ideal dog do? My ideal dog would keep walking beside me, ignoring the approaching person. I could talk to the person as we kept walking, good morning, and my dog could look up at the person and then go, yeah, whatever, and keep walking. That would be my perfect dog if the person kept walking. If I stopped to chat with the person, my dog would hang out, possibly move towards the person and give them a sniff. If the person wanted to pet him, my dog would acknowledge that by either moving towards them or wagging their tail. But if they just stood there, that would be fine too. But if the person ignored them, my dog would walk over, sniff them, and then come back and hang out. What I don't want is the dog that sees a person from 100 feet away and starts pulling as hard as they can towards the person. While you hold on for dear life, the dog approaches the person, and as they get to about 3, 4 feet away, they launch up and are on the person, and you're pulling back, and they're scratching the person, yelling, no, off, down, and apologizing for your dog's behavior. So that's what I don't want. And most people are going to agree with that. Dorothy, we're great, lovely walk this morning. Oh, yesterday, spectacular weather. It's warm, but it's not humid. It's those perfect summer days that we live for. So back to the talk. So how does strangers beating my dog help or hurt achieving my ideal dog? If you have a super friendly puppy, your dog already loves people. I currently Wiki's like this. She doesn't need anything to attract her to people. A person looks at her and she starts to wag her little tail and be like, "Oh my God, I'm so excited." Um, but she understands self-control, so doesn't move towards them until released to say hello. So what you want to teach is that self-control if you have a super I love people puppy. Having strangers feed your dog who is already super excited will make your dog even more excited when he sees people and therefore harder to control because you are rewarding the super excited behavior. Remember, you always have to pay attention to what you're rewarding. Let's think of it from the dog's point of view. People are so exciting. I love meeting new people. If I go towards them, they touch me, which makes me so happy. You get to the person, you're super excited, you're jumpy, and now they're giving you cookies. Wow, my head is exploding. Now you've taken it from super excited to even ultra exciting, further reinforcing the behavior that the sight of people causes you to lose control. And then, and this is a pet peeve, I won't lie, the person giving your dog a cookie will go sit, sit, sit because your dog's jumping on them. And then sometimes your dog sits, sometimes they don't. But even if they're sitting, it's not, they're still like, and then they feed them. So not only are they reinforcing super excited behavior and out of control behavior, but now they're also reinforcing the dog not sitting when they approach people, which is probably what you want to teach them to help them understand how to stay under control. It's hard enough to teach super friendly dogs to exhibit a semblance of self control around new people. Don't make it harder by having people give your dog cookies. This is not going to help you achieve the ideal dog we were talking about earlier. So let's go to the other side of the coin. How about if you have a super shy puppy or even a semi shy puppy? And then you're thinking, okay, this is good. I should get people to give them cookies, right? No. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out this way. What happens with a shy or nervous dog, the goal is for them to experience people in a good way. And that means you can never let them feel threatened. You want to give them lots of really good experiences. And that might be for a lot of shy dogs, 10, 20, 30, 40 feet away. Doesn't matter how far. Every good experience puts them in the state to have a next good experience. So if they need to see people from 40 feet away and that's what they're comfortable with, that's where you start. With a person goes to give your dog a cookie, they will move into your dog. And this is likely violating your dog's space, making your dog feel unsafe. Every time people make your dog feel unsafe or strangers, you are building your dog's fear and discomfort around strangers, which is the opposite of what you want. Even the dogs that will come in, some dogs, when you approach them with a cookie, will just be like, no, too close. But some dogs who are highly food driven will charge and grab the cookie and then back up. Yes, there is value in the cookie, but what's the state of the dog? He's not like, oh, I love people now. People are great. I approach them, I take a cookie. He's like, I really want that cookie, but that's stressing me out. So I'm going to quickly run in and grab and run. Yes, the cookie's rewarding, but this isn't the state you want to reward. And the reinforcement for running away is potentially stronger than the reinforcement for the cookie. Um, I have seen this. This is how we used to deal with reactivity and with fear. And usually I see this make the dog worse, not better. Because I think it's like a lure. And as soon as you start luring fear, you start to build in, because their state of mind is not great, you start to build in a lot of fear. You want to reward good choices so that helping them overcome the fear, you don't want to lure them. You can use food when working a shy dog, but I think it's a great idea for the handler, the owner, to handle the food. That way you can control what you reinforce. For example, if I am working a dog that is not comfortable with strangers, I will have the stranger stop and chat with me about 5 feet away. A nice, comfortable bubble. Depending on the dog, it might be 10, but we'll go with, let's say it's 5. And I want them to completely ignore the dog. This gives the dog the opportunity to thoroughly check the person out and possibly make a choice to step forward. If the dog chooses to step towards the stranger, and by the way, most dogs will eventually, if given the opportunity, step towards the stranger, unless they've had a lot of fear experience. Because with shy puppies or inexperienced dogs, the shyness or the fear is more a concern. It is not an established fear till they've had bad experiences. So you want to, their natural curiosity will pull them forward. As soon as the dog chooses to step forward, I will toss a cookie just in front of his nose, encouraging the next step, but reinforcing the step of the thought of stepping forward. And this is the problem with a lure. If he backs up and I reinforce, then I'm rewarding the backing up, not the moving forward. To recap, having strangers give food to your dog is not a good idea. Inadvertently, the person may be rewarding what you don't want, such as pulling, jumping with a friendly dog, and backing away with a shy dog. Training happens whether you want it to or not. Make sure that what you're doing is building value for what you want. When working on behavior change, be conscious that every interaction your dog is having, whether you want it to or not, every interaction is shaping them to the dog they will become. Okay, so next on my list of false beliefs is one I did with my first dog. And like I said, a lot of these I've done. I've learned from experience and from observation that this isn't working. Um, a polite dog must always sit before getting a cookie. I remember reading that over and over and over when I got my first dog. If I am working on a sit, then yes, the dog must sit before getting a cookie. I totally agree. But when I'm working on come or any other behavior, I have to be rewarding that behavior, not the sit. Let's look at coming. Sit is actually the opposite of come. And puppies come home and everyone teaches them sit. We have been so conditioned that this is so important. And people just think it's great. Look, I hold a cookie, my dog sits, I reward them, I have trained something. But is that all you want your dog to do? No. The dog who sees the cookie and sits is great, but that's all they know how to do. Let's look at a scenario that often happens to dog owners at home. When you're in the house, you call your dog and they sit. You walk over and reward them. Now, technically, you just rewarded them for not coming. Even if they are a foot away and you call your dog and he sits instead of moving towards you, he is not coming. And that's what you rewarded because they didn't move excuse me, because they didn't move towards you and you rewarded that. Now put this into real life. You're out in the field, you call your dog. Reinforcement history has taught them that when you call, they should sit. So your dog sits. Now you start getting frustrated and calling more and more, but your dog's like, now you're not happy. I don't know if I want to come to not happy. At home, you reward me for sitting. Explain this way, it's easier to see how you may be missing this huge foundation piece of teaching your dog to move towards you to come with calls. When I work with puppies, I now ask them to not work on sit. They all do anyways. I ask them to not work on sit till the concept of coming into their space is super strong. I build this understanding by it starts with the owner takes a step back and rewards the dog between their legs under the height of the chin of the dog. By the way, one of the reasons dog owners were teaching sit when the dog came was because the dogs were jumping. The dogs jump because we hold our food up here and then we do this to reward the dog. So the food's coming down to them. The dog starts helping you out by reaching for the food. But the problem is they get faster and faster, and now they're coming into you and launching because your food's way up here, because we like to wait for some reason. Instead, I want at the beginning, when my dog's about a body length away, you put the food to between your legs under the height of the chin of the dog. This causes your dog to come in looking down. And because the food only ever comes in that position, there's no point going anywhere else. The food's going to come there. Why would it be anywhere else? When you do this, if your dog stretches and gets it here, he's like, oh, if I stretch, it comes higher, it comes sooner. Does that make sense? Good morning, Julie. Last night I took them for a lovely afternoon run that ended with both dogs walking quietly with me on leash. Someday I hope it will be possible on the street. Julie, you are working so hard. We will keep working on this. I have no doubt we will get them both walking down the street. Having two dogs, that is always one of my goals. Can they do it together? But you started it. First step. Awesome job. Okay, back to the jumping dogs. Try it with your dog. So I want you to do a test. I want you wait till your dog's walking through your kitchen and you're doing something else. Call your dog, give one cue, whether you use their dog's name, whether you use come, whatever cue you have that tells your dog, stop what you're doing, turn around and come towards me. What does your dog do? One, remember one cue, not kissy noises, not slapping the legs. Those are all false beliefs. We feel that if we go through the whole repertoire, our dogs will come. So, does your dog run right over? Does your dog sit? Does your dog ignore you completely and keep walking? Well, if your dog can't do it in your kitchen, the odds of him doing it outside are much slimmer. So then I want you to do the test a little differently. Have a bowl of cookies. Wait till your dog's walking through the kitchen and then call your dog. Does he come? Does he sit? Or does he ignore you completely? These are tests. These help you understand what your dog knows so then you can work on that. A good recall is much more important than a good sit. You want to know that your dog understands what he should do when you call. How about your dog? Anyone have any examples of accidentally rewarding the opposite of what we actually want? I hope I got you guys thinking, what am I doing that could be rewarding the wrong thing? Okay, the next two I'm going to talk about have to do with the concept of being alpha or dominance or dominant. I am so happy to say that dominance training or being the pack leader has pretty well been debunked in a lot of dog training circles. It is still around without a doubt. I hear it from clients and I see it in other trainers' ads or Facebook pages or websites. But I hear about it a whole lot less from clients than I did 5, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Let me give you a little history so you understand what happened and why it created and why it's debunked. Initial wolf studies were done on captive wolves. Wolves are very skittish, so initial studies were done on captive wolves because scientists did not have the technology to track them. Within the confines, there was a hierarchy. Think of captive wolves like people working in an office. When people are confined, a hierarchy develops. This keeps everybody safe. With more current studies of non-captive wolves, they found that wolves are much more like family units. Dogs are similar, but their timing is different. And we are also similar. Babies are born, they stay close to home. So this is puppies. Um, I live in the country. People have like 2 acre lots, 1 acre lot. And I'll talk to someone who has a 2, 3 month old puppy. They're like, oh, my dog is wonderful. He never leaves the yard, comes every time I call him. This is because puppies are designed to are created to stay close to their owner. The other thing I get all the time is my dog hates going for a walk. He fights and fights and fights when I'm leaving the house. That's because dogs want to stay home. That's built in. And I want to encourage that. I want to build what I call the invisible leash. So my dog understands staying close to me is how they stay safe. So at about 5 months, adolescence hits and they start to wander further away. For example, puppies start to leave their yard at about 5. It's like they have a calendar. My clients are like, they're not leaving, they're not leaving, they're not leaving. Holy, they're leaving. 5 months on the nose. With wolves, this happens at about 2 years old. Mother Nature is very smart. This need to disperse is so they don't inbreed, building stronger genetics. So now your dog starts to wander further and further away. They then find their mate make a new family grouping. And this proves to us that wolves and dogs are not pack animals. They are not looking for a leader. They are looking to live their lives in the best comfort possible, just like us. Of course, like with people, you will have dogs that are going to push much harder for what they want, and dogs that are going to be super easygoing and just go with the flow. This is all managed through training. This is still a training issue. It is not, you don't have to be dominant. Teaching the dog to clearly understand what is and isn't available, it's a self control issue. Back to how this affects you and the possible false beliefs you may have around it. The list of false beliefs around being a pack leader is long. Most of them items are just lack of training and taking the lack of understanding from the dog to be an attempt at dominance. I'm just going to tackle a couple in today's live. Should you eat before your dog? I still get questions. Well, shouldn't I make sure the dog waits till we're done eating before he gets fed? It's funny how these odd little bits stuck around, even though the general concepts have mostly gone. And then in a lot of, and I actually looked up websites that still quote dominance theories, and refusal to listen to commands is dominance. I beg to differ. Refusal to listen to commands is lack of training. I admit, I made sure my first dog ate after me so he wouldn't think I was alpha. This was what I was taught by my mentors at the time. This was my false belief, and of course, I didn't want to not be alpha. Who wants to not be alpha? Who wants to not be dominant? I remember having discussions with my husband. Do you think he's being dominant? I'm not sure. That sounds horrible. How can I not be dominant? Like, thinking back, I'm like, oh, wow, what a way to get into my own head. So instead of trying to figure out how to train him, I was in a panic that I was losing my dominance. This is what I hate about this whole paradigm. It puts us into a state of fear. Oh no, what if my dog thinks he's alpha? Fear makes you reactive and takes away your ability to think and problem solve. Fear is not going to produce good dog training results because you're not looking at it from a, how can I fix this? You're looking at it, oh no, he's being dominant. I have to suppress him so that he doesn't think he's dominant. Watch your dog in everyday life. They just don't think that hard. They really just don't. People, they eat poo. They're not being dominant. They're being dogs. Do you think that they are being dominant when they eat poo? But yet when they steal food off your counter, they're being dominant. No, they're opportunistic. Don't take me wrong. They will take full advantage of the situation. If you leave food on the counter, unless they're trained not to, they will steal it, potentially. This depends on the dog and how drive they are and how athletic and of course how tall they are. And but not dominance. It's opportunity. Sure, once this happens once, I guarantee your dog's going to start watching those counters. And that's where the good stuff is. Why not? And he's going to try it again and again, if not trained differently. It'd be silly not to. The opportunistic behavior is hardwired into them. That's how they survive. All creatures, humans too. Think if you were walking down the street and you find $100 bill. I bet you're going to keep a closer eye on that street for at least a few weeks. Let's say it's a street you walk regularly. But even if it wasn't, you might try to make your path so it goes down the street because you found $100 bill. Now, let's say you find another $100 bill or maybe a couple more. I promise you, you are going to take the street on a regular basis because the potential for reinforcement, another $100 bill, causes you to go, hey, it happened once, it might happen again. The great hope. Okay. Julie, Caesar Milan did alpha training holding his dog on its back. His show isn't easily found on TV, luckily. So there was so much alpha rolling years ago. Monks of New Ski, Caesar is very big on dominance and submissive behaviors and all that stuff. And I actually haven't watched a whole lot of Caesar. I just seen some. It's all intimidation and fear. I don't want to train that way. I want my dog to be comfortable. I hate to say the word happy because then he has to get what he wants all the time. So let's say comfortable and content. But I still want them to listen to me and do what I ask. But I do not want them to be fearful and suppressed so they don't behave like a real dog because they're terrified not to. And that's what Caesar does. If you ever, don't mind swearing, and want a really funny skit, Eddie Murphy's brother, I think his name is Charlie Murphy, has a skit on Caesar Milan. He's a stand-up comic. Oh, it's really funny. Watch it. Okay, so after your dog's gotten food off the counter a couple of times, he's going to keep going for the counters. You need to change the behavior. And this we go back to my problem solving, management, and training. Yelling at the dog, correcting the dog, God forbid, alpha rolling the dog will not change the fact that he got food off the counter and will check it again and again just in case. It has nothing to do with you. He is not being bad. He's not being dominant. He is being a dog and he's not doing it to you. He is doing it to the counter. I get it. With a busy family, it can be hard to make sure there's never food left out for your dog to steal. You might be able to keep the place clean, but your spouse, your kids, not 100% realistic. So here's what I do. I prevent the behavior counter surfing from the beginning by teaching my dogs to sit on their spot when there is food out. As puppies, they start in a crate, creating the habit of being rewarded by sitting quietly in their crate while anybody's in the kitchen. If the dog's in the kitchen, he's in a crate. As a puppy in a crate does not need to be supervised with my full attention. I can focus on doing the cooking and the cleaning and all the things you have to do in the kitchen. They graduate to a bed as they learn how to hang out without the help of the crate. And I do have a Facebook Live on teaching your dog to sit on his bed. As adult dogs, when I walk into the kitchen, the dogs go to their spot because that's where all the reinforcement is, where their bed is, understanding this is the way to earn rewards. I manage them by putting them in the crate or taking them with me when they are young or inexperienced. So if I leave food on the counter, they don't get the opportunity to get it. Once they are trained, they're in the habit of food being on the counters and not being available. Not because I'm dominant, but because they are trained. Let me say that again. They do not steal food because they are trained, not because they think I'm dominant and the food all belongs to me. You have to teach your dogs what is expected of them. It takes time and practice and a history of not being rewarded by the wrong things. I, I get it. With multiple people living in the house, especially once you have like teenage kids who kind of are old enough to make their own food, but not old enough to put it away necessarily, your management has to be higher. But you can give your kids really clear rules. Like you can put a sign in your kitchen. If you're making food, that dog better be in the crate. That gives them clear guidelines to follow. And that way the dog goes in a crate when they make food and they could stay in the crate till somebody arrives to clean up the kitchen. That's fine. I'd rather my dog sit in the crate a little longer than learn that that teenager is going to leave the butter dish right at the edge of the counter and I'm going to go over and eat it the minute they walk out of the kitchen. It is as simple as that, but simple isn't easy. It takes work. Quick plug for my coaching program, the Canine Reset. I get how hard raising a puppy can be, or even harder, fixing unwanted behaviors in an adult dog who has a history of being rewarded for things we don't want. If you're struggling, or if you simply want to be a step ahead of your opportunistic dog, reach out. The Canine Essentials coaching program was excuse me, designed to help you get your goals using a training plan custom made for your lifestyle. And that's the most important part of your training your dog, making sure the training works for you, your life, your family, your home. Not following a plan you found designed for a dog different than yours, or a dog owner who lives a completely different life than you do. So if you need help, send me a message, comment below, or I'll get in touch. I'm currently enrolling in July, so don't delay. Okay, back to false beliefs. I got one more. Here's one that everyone believes, yet it's not based on any reality, or a lot of people believe, anyways. A dog should not go through doorways ahead of you. Not quite sure how this came to be from watching wolf packs. I haven't had the pleasure of studying wolves in the wild or captivity, but I do live in the country and get to watch wildlife. One morning, we watched a pack of wild turkeys walking across a field. By the way, a group of wild turkeys is called a rafter because I had to look it up. Like watching a human family in the park. The young ones were out in front running around having fun. And you could tell because they were smaller and more gray, where the big, stately birds were at the back, walking much more sedately. And the little ones were running around all over the place, all in front. And then they were harassing a deer. There was a deer eating the field, and they kept running in and kind of making noise and running away and running in until the deer finally left. Typical kids. When they came to a narrowing, the young birds didn't all stop and wait for the older birds to walk through. They just kept on going. Some of them flew over the fence, some of them went through the gate, but they didn't wait. But I still get clients asking me if they should stop their dogs at doorways so they know who is dominant. First answer, no. You should not stop your dogs at doorways to show them you are alpha. This doesn't make any sense. I don't even know how this one came to be. Some of the stuff, the dominance alpha stuff, I had a book that said pee in your dog's dinner so he knows you're the alpha. Ew. And honestly, some dogs would probably enjoy that. But stopping them at the doorway can be a useful skill if that is what you want. My dogs have to sit at exits and wait to be released. I'm always, I almost always release them ahead of me because I can walk through and release, because walking through first and then releasing them puts me away from the door. So usually if it's an exit, I need to close the door after them. So if I release them, then I walk through and close the door. It's just, it's convenient. Um, with indoor doorways, they have no rules. The dogs sometimes go ahead of me and sometimes they don't. There are no rules, whatever. They are not allowed to take me out, which means if my dogs are coming through and push me out of the way, then I will work on that. Then I would start putting a lot more controls in because taking me out is not an option. But as puppies, um, some people relinquish space and some people don't. I don't. Partly because I've been injured enough that if something's coming moving towards me, even a puppy, I plant my feet. And then the puppy runs into me. And then the puppy doesn't do that anymore because it's uncomfortable. Some people are very accommodating, meaning if the puppy's running towards them or towards something and they're in the way, they move out of the way so the puppy can go by unencumbered. This is teaching your dog that you will always get out of their way. I've seen in agility dogs who will take their owners out at both sides. But if you start as a puppy, the dog's running by you, just plant your feet. The dog will run into you a couple of times and be like, she doesn't move. So if I go around her, it feels better. And then they're not bowling you out of the way in the house. Um, because of the practice with exit doors, if there's a closed door in the house, and if I pause before opening, sometimes I just open the door and they switch through and I don't care. But if I pause, they'll all sit because they're like, when in doubt, near a door, hand on knob, I should sit and wait. Again, not dominance, training. I do this because it prevents pushing and shoving at the door. The reason I do the whole exit thing, it prevents pushing and shoving at the doors when I own multiple dogs. It prevents running out the door when I open it when, let's say, I'm getting a pizza or something. It allows me to practice my stay multiple times a day that serves me in agility. And most important of all, it is one more situation where my dogs get to practice self control. I get to do games like release one, then the other, and change that up. So I know the dogs are thinking instead of just doing. Practicing the ability to not get everything they want right now. Again, not dominance, just training. I'm teaching my dogs skills that make our life together easier. That's it. The mindset that your dog's refusal to listen to commands is because they are dominant is high up on my list of beliefs that will damage your relationship with your dog. But let's entertain that it is not true. When a dog doesn't listen to a command, he is not doing it on purpose. Stay with me. I can see your mind going to, yes, he is. He knows exactly what I want and he's refusing to listen. Let's use an example as a sit. Back to the sit. When a dog does not perform a cue, it's almost always one of two reasons. He doesn't understand the cue or he is overfaced by the environment and can't engage his brain. Every day you practice sit in your house, on walks in your yard. Your dog always sits, but most of the time, if you really start to pay attention, it takes multiple cues. Or you step into the dog, or you have to show them the cookies first. Is he being stubborn? I think not. But what if your dog's understanding of a sit is just nowhere near what you think it is? And when you put pressure on him, he gets a little stressed out and goes, I can't even do it more. What if you don't realize you are using your hands and your body to get the sit, or your dog's not actually responding to a verbal cue? I do this with puppy owners or dog owners all the time. They're like, my dog knows how to sit. And then I go, well, what about this? Can you do it standing with your hands at your side? And they say sit, and the dog doesn't. And can you sit on a chair and say sit, and the dog doesn't. So once you start questioning, the dog's like, no, no. When you hold a cookie, I sit, but I don't have an other cue to sit. So back to my notes. So now when you say sit, if your dog is not looking at you, if you're using body language, he doesn't understand because he doesn't really understand the verbal. He only understands body language. He is not being stubborn. He is not being dominant. He actually doesn't understand what you are asking because when you practice, you are inadvertently helping him, making you think he understands. The minute you switch your mindset from he is not being bad, he just doesn't understand, your ability to train your dog will skyrocket because instead of getting defensive and annoyed, you will start problem solving how to help your dog understand. My question when I learned this was, well, how do I know what my dog knows? I remember constantly going, it was, you have to earn the right to correct. Fine. Because you have to make sure your dog understands what he understands before you can be like, now you're being a bad dog. Um, but how do you do this? And this is the next part. So, one thing, the longer I do this, the more I realize the dogs never need to, rarely be need to be corrected. And even then it's mild. Yeah, they make mistakes, but you're like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, sorry. If you need a harder correction than that, then your dog doesn't understand or is overfaced. Like the longer I do this, the less I feel they need to be corrected. I cannot say that enough. Or the less I feel they're being bad. Let's put it that way. Okay, so the answer of how you know what your dog knows is proofing. Asking your dog questions to clarify what he does and does not know, like taking your dog by the collar and having him standing. Throw a handful of cookies on the ground and verbally cue the sit. Does he hit? Sit. If he sat, awesome. Now we're going to challenge him a little more. Have your dog in a stand with your hand in his collar. Throw one treat on the floor 2 feet in front of your dog. Say, get it, release the collar. Repeat 5 times. Now, do the exact same thing. So hold your dog by the collar, dog's in a stand, throw the kibble out 2 feet, and say, instead of saying get it, say sit. Does he sit? Or is he like, usually what happens in a situation like this, and this is with a dog who understands sit, he'll flinch. His brain starts to try to go into a sit, but then he's like, oh my God, there's a cookie on the floor, and I get that. And this is the next step in training. This is teaching your dog to be able to take his brain from one thing and put it on his body. This is the recall off the squirrel. Because if he can't sit when there's a cookie 2 feet away, I guarantee you can't sit when he can't come when he's in a full run after a squirrel. But that's what you're working on. Okay, so the cookie's on the floor, you've asked him to sit, and he sits, you say, get it, let him get the cookie. If he doesn't sit, move him further away, ask him for sit again. Move him to another room, ask him to sit. When he sits, send him to get it. If he did sit, did he have to take his eyes off the cookie to sit? A lot of times you'll see them, they'll hear you, they'll turn, they'll look at you, then they sit, then you say, get it. My ideal training situation is my dog staring straight at the cookie and you say sit and he can put his body into a sit without taking his eyes off the cookie because that's the recall for the squirrel. Okay, one more challenge for the keeners. Dog in a sit or a stand beside you, hand in collar, throw the cookie out 2 feet away. Now ask your dog to down. What happened? So again, same thing. You can walk further away, cue the down. If the dog's brain explodes, which means he can't do anything, he's just like, oh, no problem. Step away from the whole cookies on the ground, work your down. About 10 downs, walk around, down, reward, 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 down, reward, reward, reward. Don't forget to release in between. And then go back and try again. So you're putting the down right there at the front and then going, can you do it now? So you can play with it to make it easier. Yes, ideally, we want the dogs responding right away the first time, but you can play with it to get them there to practice that success. So eventually it will happen. This is called proofing. Check out the show notes for the link to proofing live I did a couple of weeks ago. Currently, when I work with this with Wicca, she flinches when I ask for the down, and that's about it. The flinch shows me she hears me, but the lack of movement tells me too much of her brain is on the cookie and she doesn't have enough left over for the down. I could make it easier by taking her away from the bowl and working a bunch of downs, making the down more prevalent in her brain. And that would be what I would suggest you did. And if your dog doesn't flinch at all, then I would be doing a whole bunch of down tests. Can you stand in front of your dog and say down and your dog drops? Or do you have to use a hand signal? This is giving you more information. You're not going to get the verbal in front of the cookie if you can't get the verbal without the cookie. What I want you to take from this live is to question everything. The hard part about false beliefs is we might not realize we are doing them. It's just something we do without question. Some of these things we do will be good. Some will be creating behaviors that you hate and would like to get rid of. The easiest way to see them is to always side with the dog. Watch the shoulds. My dog should do this. My dog should know that. To change your mindset to right now, my dog is telling me that he doesn't know this. What can I do to help him understand? This will open your brain to find solutions instead of continuing the same battle. If you want to help changing your dog's behavior with support along the way, following a plan custom designed for you and your dog and your life, message me to find out more about my Canine Reset program. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. I had a great time talking to you this morning. And join me next week, next Friday, 10 a.m. for our next live. I will be around for a few minutes if you have some comments you'd like to leave. Otherwise, we'll see you all next week. Bye, guys.